Joining me here this morning is Nicole Garraway. She is the Senior EPA Implementation Officer, and Dawn Walker, the Technical Administrative Support for the EPA. So good morning, ladies. How are you doing?
Good morning.
Welcome.
Fine, thank you.
Welcome to Daybreak Grenada.
Thank you very much for having us.
Okay, nice. So just tell us exactly, what does EPA stand for?
Well, EPA stands for Economic Partnership Agreement. Essentially, in this case, we refer to the CARIFORUM EU EPA, and it's basically a trade and development agreement between 15 CARIFORUM states and 27 EU member states.
Okay, and we're assuming that Grenada is part of...
Yes,
okay.
That's correct. Grenada is one of the 15 CARIFORUM states.
Okay, nice, nice.
Can you just, the CARIFORUM, what is the CARIFORUM made up?
Basically, the CARIFORUM comprises the 14 independent CARICOM states, so that excludes Montserrat, along with the Dominican Republic and Cuba. However, Cuba has not signed on to the agreement.
Right.
Okay.
What is the duration of this agreement? When was it started, and when will it end, if it will end?
No, that agreement started in 2008, but there is no duration.
Okay.
There is no duration to the agreement. It is something that will be continuing. It is a continuous agreement.
Right. And what are the benefits of this agreement? What does it entail, really? What does it mean for Grenada?
Well, there are different aspects to the agreement, to be honest. There's the trade in goods aspect, trade in services, and many others, but I specifically want to mention as well the cultural protocol. So specific to the opportunities in trade in goods, it provides exporters within the CARIFORUM, including Grenada, of course, with the opportunity to enter the EU markets, having no tariffs basically on their exports, which means that they can now export at a lower rate, giving them a better opportunity to penetrate the EU markets. Specific to trade and services, it provides opportunities for professionals and firms as well to access the EU markets and work and gain experience within EU territories. Dawn, I'm not too sure if you want to talk about culture.
Actually, there are a number of chapters as well as cultural protocol, other protocols that help guide us through. So although we are familiar with artists going to the UK and going to Europe, which is part of Europe more or less, to perform, but it gives us more opportunities so that we can have different aspects of it. For instance, we may not just be the entertainers like the people who do calypsos or host them shows, but you'll find that you can have joint ventures. It's one of the things in which we encourage. You can have joint ventures with that. You can partner with a company in Europe to help develop your culture. They're not really looking for people who are at the top, but people that they can work with to develop that aspect of it. So whether it is dancing or whether it is playwriting or so forth, that has really opened up to include all that components of culture.
Right. So let's break it down. Imagine, Mark and I have a business, we're selling water, for instance, and we think that the EU market, they need some more water. Do we just, how do we, work out? Do we come to you and say, look, we need to penetrate this market, and then we just move abroad and boom, we're ready?
Well, in regard to that, the water would be considered a good, right?
Okay.
So specific to trade in goods, apart from having the market access, there are also specific requirements and regulations, of course, you would have to meet to ensure and to protect your citizens, both in the EU and, of course, in CARIFORUM. So once you would have met those requirements and once you have everything in place, and I would hope that you'll ensure first that you have a market share there to target. So once you have all of that in place, then yes, you can enter the market. And once water is one of the goods that the tariff has been reduced on, you're free to enter the market at reduced rates and benefit from that opportunity.
So there's a list of items that the tariffs aren't on.
There is an exclusion list, yes, that's correct, for CARIFORUM states and the European Union member states. But to be honest, the EU, considering their size, they have really favored, so to speak, the CARIFORUM in that they have liberalized more goods than we have. And when I speak of liberalization, I mean basically the reduction and elimination of tariffs. They have liberalized more goods than CARIFORUM states, and they've also done it in a shorter time frame. So Grenada and the other CARIFORUM states have been allotted 25 years to phase out the reduction of tariffs. So we're basically looking to finish in about 2033, whereas the EU has immediately liberalized their markets. So we're in a better position, so to speak.
Okay, so I mean, it's not to say that, I mean, the water and so on, if it's not on the list, it doesn't mean that we can't export water, right?
Course,
it's just, so I mean, if I was selling water, there's nothing wrong with me going to somebody in Europe and going, hey, I want to sell you my water, and business goes on as normal. But this makes things a lot easier for those particular goods.
What are some of the requirements that you mentioned? There's some requirements according to what you're selling that you have to pass. Can you probably share a few of those with us?
Well, like everything else, you do have standards. And one of the things I guess we're more concerned with is the sanitary and phytosanitary measures to meet the standards. So the good thing about that agreement, it has a development component to it that will help provide technical assistance to us. So for instance, you will have parts like market access. How do you get onto the European market? Export readiness. How do you bring your goods or your commodities up to par in order to enter the EU market? And we are getting technical assistance for that. So therefore, that would be the major requirement. And I know sometimes we're concerned with economies of scale. We think because of our size, we can't meet the market. What that agreement is really about is not just Grenada, because as Ms. Gawe said at the beginning, it is the CARI Forum. So you have other islands which will also engage interregional trade between our neighbors. So even though you can't meet that quantity, what we're saying is you can partner with somebody. You can partner with somebody to take the opportunities on the market out there. Otherwise, you may never export anything if you can't meet that quota at all. So it offers, what it asks us to do is to draw on the strengths of others and not just operate as an individual.
Now, I noticed we've been talking about the direction of Grenada going, further north. What about the direction coming the opposite way? Are there any benefits coming in from the EU to, Grenada and the other CARI Forum states?
I would say yes, and I always use this example. I don't know if you've visited Real Value recently, but there's an influx of products such as Waitrose, for example, which is a UK product. And I'm sure you know the EU, they're very known for organic foods and promoting healthy living and healthy eating and so on. So I think from that aspect, we should see an influx of a lot of healthier products, more organic products and so on, and at cheaper rates, because of course importers can now import from the EU at reduced rates. So hopefully that in turn will be translated into reduced costs in items.
Okay, nice. And has any of our Grenadian persons taken advantage of these opportunities as yet? Any success stories?
Well, there are success stories. We have heard of La Grenade Industry. I've heard as well. That's Mr. Dennis Noel. Maybe there are other persons, but that's two of the main success stories out there. So it's not something totally new to Grenada. We have already entered the market with our niche, and we can continue to do so. Now, the Grenada chocolate industry, I think they're also on the market over there. So we already have success stories. We just want to develop on it and encourage persons, whether in the manufacturing industry, to take the opportunity to capitalize, to expand, to increase trade, and not just with Europe, but increase interregional trade between our countries, between the CARICOM countries. So we just want to encourage persons to do that. Now it goes back to, as Ms. Gawe mentioned, if you have visited Real Value recently, you notice an influx of commodities. However, you may say, I don't want a manufacturer to export, and that may be fine with you. But the fact is, when it comes to quality, if the prices are the same, what we import from Europe and what we manufacture here, and it comes to quality, what would you purchase? Obviously, you are going to go for quality. So even though initially you say, I'm not manufacturing for export, you should manufacture to keep your customer base and in order to retain your market.
Nice.
So how can people take better advantage of this? What do people need to do? How can we maximize on this opportunity?
Firstly, I think persons need to have an appreciation of the agreement to fully understand not just the opportunities, but the requirements that go along with the provisions, some of which we discussed here today. And of course, persons are free to call the EPA unit at 435-9251, where we would discuss, of course, what's required and in greater detail, the EPA. Additionally, we would encourage persons to engage in some market intelligence to see what exactly is out there for them, which territories they can best service, because of course that is important. While yes, we can access the market and there are opportunities to penetrate the market, you should really do some market research to ensure that you can penetrate and then retain a certain market share for longevity and profitability purposes. But again, persons are free to call the EPA office where we would, further discuss in detail.
Okay.
I noticed you mentioned EPA unit. Is it attached to the government somehow?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. It's within the Ministry of Finance. Our physical location is upstairs, the VAT unit. So in case persons are around to pay taxes and so on, feel free to come upstairs, and drop by, and we'll be more than happy to engage any stakeholder.
Right. And persons who are willing to take advantage of this opportunity, the EPA would assist them along the way, I'm assuming?
Yes, to a certain extent, because while we can provide the information, we can possibly link them with inquiry points in the EU or maybe even in some specific territories, and as well as CARICOM. At the end of the day, this is something that is private sector driven. So whereas we can guide them along the way to a certain extent, at a point in time we would need them to, take the initiative and go along with it.
Good. So, just to remind us, who exactly can come to you? Is it anybody who has a private business? Anybody who has some sort of cultural talent?
Anybody, anybody within Grenada can come to us. Because it's for the private sector, whether it's product manufacturing, whether it's culture, whether it's services, whatever it is, students want information. Of course, we do have a website. It's in
nepaiu.gov.gd.
Right.
Okay.
So we have a website that persons can visit.
NEPAU.
NEPAIU. It's basically
okay.
an acronym for National EPA Implementation Unit.
Okay.
.gov.gd.
Okay. All right. And that document, because people need to be familiar with the document and so on. So if you're interested, that's a good place to start. And you could
Yes, and the document is on the website. Now, I must warn viewers, it's very, very long. The text along with its annexes and scheduled and so on. It's very long, but please don't let that deter you. Just try and read it piece by piece.
Is there any plan to maybe make a more basic version, even with a list of like products, goods, services, so that if I go like here manufacturing water, I could go on there and go like, oh, water is on the list, and start to put rather say reading a document.
You'll find that within the tariff liberalization schedule, of course, that schedule is quite big because you're talking about each and every commodity you have in Grenada.
Right.
But you can go specifically on that, and you can find whatever product you're looking for.
Okay.
I'm sure what we can do is just go down to the office and argue with the ladies at the office, say, I was reading page 10, not really, but,
Paragraph 4.
they know it, so they can tell us.
Yeah.
But this was definitely enlightening. I really hope that you would have reached some persons out there. Any last words before we wrap up?
Well, I just want to encourage everybody to get familiar with the agreement, to look at the opportunities. It's here to stay. I should say it's not going away. And while we may sit and become a bit reluctant to take the opportunities, there are others who are taking the opportunities over there. So it means that although we may have some issues, we may have some problems, we need to focus on it, yes, on one hand, but on the other hand, we should be taking the opportunities that currently exist while we work on the problems that we have. So I want to encourage everybody to become familiar with the agreement and to look for the opportunities within the agreement.
Okay.
I would basically just like to echo the sentiments of Ms. Walker, and of course to encourage persons either to call the EPA unit or to go onto the website and learn more about the agreement, because as Ms. Walker has mentioned, it's an agreement that's here to stay. There are very many opportunities for Grenadians, and I really do hope that we capitalize on these opportunities.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having us.
Nice. So we were just talking about the EPA.